there's a question around attribution and other things as well. And again, that's why we made it transparent and offered the chance to opt out, because like everyone was kind of doing this, but no one was transparent about it.
Mm.
We won't need to have any crawls within a year. It will be synthetic data sets or national data sets or similar with retrieval augmented models that can look stuff up. But it is what it is now. And again, you got to put the word out there. The actions they're taking with the various lawsuits and policy pushes would basically entrench all power with the existing IP holders. And a lot of kind of artists are pushing for something that would be akin to music copyright, or even style is copyrighted. That's a dark road that I don't think they really want to go down, and they don't really understand it. But again, I understand the fear because this is completely unknown. Just like now, from some of my previous comments, got a lot of programmer hate. Because what is a programmer? The nature of what an illustrator is will change. All the artists I know love this technology because it's just another medium for them. The nature of what a programmer is going to change. All the architects and 10 times people I know really love this technology. And this is what we've seen with like MIT studies and other things. They had a study where I think they showed that the third to the seventh percentile got like 20, 30, 40% better, and the top 5% got multitudes better. Because again, how many people know how to deal with very talented youngsters? Very few. Those that can harness it get even better.
Mm. So when you look at what NVIDIA is doing, what do you think that that implies for the next generation of AI?
Well, I mean, we figured out how to scale these chips. So the previous limit was as you put more and more of these supercomputers together, you had a tailing off as you scaled. So there's only so much that you could scale the compute. NVIDIA, Google, and Intel have basically cracked that now in terms of how to just stack more supercomputer chips to scale to even bigger models or models that are trained for longer. So it's either bigger or trained for longer. Trained for longer seems to be better now. And that just means that the capabilities will increase year by year. And they're already pretty darn good. The key bottleneck will probably just be actually chips to run these models, not chips to train these models, the inference side. Because right now you have a small amount of consumer interest. Next year it becomes insane. You have a small amount of enterprise interest. Next year it becomes insane. There's not enough GPUs or chips in the world to meet up with that demand.
Mm. Okay, when I think about what's going on with, I don't know if it's just NVIDIA, it's probably the wrong thing to attribute it to, but when I think about how we're getting so good at creating things that are photorealistic, you were talking earlier about as the election is coming up, you're going to get all this kind of deep fakery. You've talked about the Web3, promise of Web3 and sort of where it's ended up. What do you think the role is for deep fakes? Does the blockchain play a role? Like, how do we stop disinformation, misinformation from being a tsunami that just makes global communication unintelligible?
I mean, this is a part of authenticity.org, which is kind of verifiable metadata, but we're looking at blockchain and other solutions, and they can get you so far. So we actually have invisible watermarking in all the models that we create, and that's why we're pushing for them to be standard, which we don't share the details of except for to the big platforms and others.
And it would be permanently visible there, or the platforms that it plays on would have to flag it?
It's visible, and then they can have kind of tools around it. Because we think that's important. That's why we try to build the defaults into our model.
Can you like download that and wipe the watermark?
If
Couldn't you
you
even have AI wipe the watermark for you?
if you knew how it was, and there may be more than one watermark.
Interesting.
So we have a variety of different technologies that we've incorporated into our own ones. Because again, we release open source, so we want good defaults.
Mm.
I think you do need to have some sort of attribution, but actually what concerns me is I think things will be attributable, identifiable. What worries me is kind of frequency bias, whereby if you hear the same thing over and over and over again, especially in a realistic voice, like Oprah comes out and says she hates Joe Biden, and so does Kamala Harris, and your aunt is seeing these videos all the time, and it can flag it as fake. It doesn't matter. It still forms association in your brain.
Mm.
You
What do we
know,
do about that?
I'm not sure. I don't think we have an answer to that. Like, I've had a big amount of press against me saying that I exaggerate a lot. I'm just like, no, I'm just really definitive about the future. And you can correct it all you want, but now everyone's like, Emad exaggerates all the time. What can you do about that? You can just make the future true and show what you can do, right?
What part do they think you exaggerate about? What's possible,
What's
or
possible and kind of what was there, because it's been a bit weird. Like, a lot of people were like, you didn't have a special relationship with Amazon. Before we raised any funding, we built the eighth fastest supercomputer in the world with them that was dedicated to us. You're like, that's factually true. They're like, yeah, but there's nothing like in print, and they're not saying that because it's a special deal, right? And then there's the future side where I say something like, There will be no programmers as we know them in 5 years. And they're like, oh, he doesn't know anything about programming, right? Because these are complicated issues. And it's a crazy time and a crazy company, and maybe I'm a bit crazy too, in terms of the way that I approach this, which is just being very definitive. But again, it's an association thing, right? Like, how do I shake that off? Well, you be successful, then you become a visionary rather than someone who's hyperbolic, right?
Mm.
How do you affect an election? What are elections? What is representative democracy? How does democracy act in the area of zero cost creation and massive optimization? So every single speech will be run through GPT-4. Cadence, all this, everything. You get micro targeting, you get all these things. Does it happen next year? Probably not. Next year, you see some very basic stuff. But what does 2028 look like? I am not sure, genuinely. And so we do need authentication standards. We do need to have some sort of maybe antivirus AI that watches out for kind of fake stuff. But even true stuff can cause huge impact. Like the Silicon Valley bank collapse was a true story. It wasn't something
Mm.
fake. They didn't have reserves. And most of our system is actually based on trust. So these are some things that concern me. I don't have the answers. But again, that's why you have to kind of raise the alarm. Like, let's try and figure this out before it comes, because maybe it doesn't happen next election. It sure as heck will in the congressional and then beyond. And again, what is the nature of democracy when you can't tell what's true or not?
Mm.
People were worried about this with the previous kind of era. This is something just beyond that, I think, because it's convincing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think is going to be a very meaningful problem. I had Yoshua Bengio on the show, and he had also signed the letter saying we should pause for 6 months.
Yeah.
And when I asked him why, because considered by many to be the godfather of AI, and I was like, bro, you've been at this for so long, like why all of a sudden? And he said uh, we were all so taken completely by surprise with how quickly AI passed the Turing test. Now, for people that don't know what the Turing test is, it's where you're having a conversation with an AI and you can't tell that they're not a real person. And he said, so yeah, we did not expect it to pass the Turing test as quickly as it did. And that changes everything. And it's just moving so much faster. And that's really the thing I want people to understand is that when a guy that spent the last 30 years building AI says, hey, all of a sudden this is moving a lot faster than we thought it would, he's somebody that's very familiar with exponential curves.
Yeah.
And even trying to plot out the exponential curves, they didn't think that it was going to happen this fast. And that the rate, not only is the rate of change extremely fast, but there's the law of accelerating returns. So the rate of change is already fast and it's getting faster. And that's the thing that I'm really worried about is this going to be something that just blindsides us from that perspective? It has a level of capability that we didn't expect this quick.
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of S curves all at once. So there's three of them: Jan LeCun, Jeffrey Hinton, and Joshua Bengio. And Jeffrey Hinton quit Google to say this is a massive risk.
Mm.
And you have Jan LeCun's like, this is a massive opportunity in terms of it'll transform the world. He loves the research and things. So they've got one versus two. But the reality is every expert in this area is basically saying none of us can predict what's going to happen. If you ask me about the capabilities of this technology in 1 year, I mean, got a rough idea. 2 years, I have no idea. All bets
Mm.
are off. Like, as a practical example, when can we have generated Hollywood quality movies? It's not even a question of if now, it's a question of when.
Correct.
If it happened a year from now, I'd be like, okay, sure. I would not even be surprised anymore. I think it'll be a few years from now.
Mm.
And even though we have one of the best media teams in the world that are building video models, I have no idea. Because there's two parts to this. One is the models themselves, but the second part is how we use the models and combine them. Like there is an amazing company called Wonder Dynamics. I don't know if you've come across them.
I've used them.
It's awesome.
Unbelievable.
And it's a bunch of different models. So Wonder Dynamics, you've got me click on it and then say I want him to be an alien, and it does this, and the alien's waving its arms, and it takes like 5 minutes. It would have taken days, weeks before
Weeks
before to create
rigging a character is one of the most difficult things you're going to do in 3D. It's insane.
minutes. And then you think, well, what is a movie, right? And you start breaking down. You're like, oh dear, because it's not necessarily just one model. It's a model combined with other models with the right flow. Because you have one talented youngster combined with other talented youngsters in the right flow, suddenly gets these things done. And that's what makes it even harder, because what we're talking about is models and AI. What we should really be talking about is systems. As the models come together and build better systems, the capabilities go crazy. And then that is another S-curve exponential.
Give me what you mean by systems.
So right now, again, a lot of the interactions we have with this AI, the text to image, the avatar creation, the GPT-4 are one-to-one. What happens when we start chaining them together to check each other's outputs? You have one that just learns everything about Tom. You have your own AI models that you train on all of the stuff that you've ever done, or all the stuff that you see on your computer screen. That's a system of lots of AIs. That's an organization of AIs. That's an ensemble of AIs.